Hi, and welcome to another edition of Newsmakers Journal of the Plague Year. It is Friday, November 20th, 17 days after the election, and we still await the president's gracious concession speech. We're joined for our roundtable by Delaney Smith of The Independent, Josh Molina of Newshawk. Thanks, guys, for being with us. So the big news, Delaney, is we're back in the purple, along with 40 other counties, about 93% of the state's population.
Yeah.
We have a curfew. What does this all mean? Or how did this come about? Is it really spreading badly?
Yeah. So as of last week, the state case rate had gone up nearly 90% from 2 weeks before. It was a massive, massive jump. And so Newsom took some pretty strong measures and he intervened. And part of that was pushing us back into the purple. But it's more than just that. He changed the rules a little bit. So it used to be that we had this 2-week cushion where if your case rate or your positivity rate wasn't right where it could be, you kind of had 2 weeks to get that in the right spot. Now they can change you multiple times a week, any time a week. They can move you back, forward or backward, multiple tiers at a time. And then you'd have to put the new rules into effect within 24 hours of the change. So it's a pretty drastic change. And then he also subsequently implemented the curfew, which is going to go into effect this Saturday at 10 p.m. And it means that between the hours of 10 p.m. and 5 p.m., you can't be outside, you can't be on the streets.
5 a.m.
Right. Did I say 5 p.m.? I meant 5 a.m. You can't be on the streets. You can't be working unless you have a job that is considered essential, and you're stuck at home otherwise. So it's
what if I have to get a prescription late at night? Just to cite one example, that
you're going to have to wait until 5 a.m. the next day.
Because CVS has to close at 10 now.
Yeah. I mean, pharmacies in general, pharmacies already are not open 24 hours, at least.
Some of them are.
And yeah, some of them are, some of them aren't, but
I know where they all are.
But you're going to have to plan accordingly, get your groceries and start getting your stuff earlier. Nothing's going to be open after 10.
Yeah. And then they had this push. They were going to write a letter to the governor. I guess they did, asking that.
That was a shocker. I'd love to talk about that.
Places of worship would be open. That was Lavanino and Doss's.
That was Lavanino and Doss and Adam. That one actually floored me that went through. So that wasn't originally on the agenda. That was an additional motion to accepting the report that they always file. And Lavanino brought it up first. He said that he had multiple constituents coming to him saying, hey, it's not fair. We want to be able to go be in our faith and practice our faith, especially during these times when depression rates are so high. And it doesn't make sense that people get to go to Costco, but they don't get to go to church, was the bottom line. And although the county public health director, Von De Reynoso, she said she was incredibly uncomfortable drafting any such letter asking Governor Newsom.
Well, they drew this parallel between stores being open and churches having to be closed, and
they're not the same. They're not the same. And Doss actually really surprised me. I mean, I guess he didn't surprise me because it's everyone knows he's a practicing Christian himself, and so maybe that influenced him in his decision making. But he said that he didn't buy that. Actually, he said, people are in stores way longer these days. Shopping trips are not short because of long lines. People spend plenty of time around each other in the local Trader Joe's. So it's BS basically, and churches should have the same. They should have the same.
Doss Williams making policy by what his life is like. Okay.
So he was the split vote and he split it though. So the county did draft a letter. Vaughn, luckily, because she did say she was really uncomfortable with it. She's not the one who had to write the letter. Just staff is writing it. But it's going to be sent to Governor Newsom requesting that churches get 25% capacity during a purple tier, which is kind of unheard of.
Yeah. So Josh, as a political matter, we get Newsom imposing this curfew not 36 hours after his embarrassing, humiliating disclosure that he himself does not feel bound by the rules. Do as I say, not as I do. I mean, what do you think? What are you hearing, from your sources, particularly in the business community, about, how this is going to fly? I can't imagine the guys in the saloon business are too happy about this, for one.
Yeah, I think that there's a level of hypocrisy that people in the business community are really frustrated with, because they have to comply with all these rules, and then going back into the purple tier, the offices are closed. And then there's this story with Gavin Newsom where he's in close quarters, having dinner with people without a mask. And I think it just plays into that whole thing of government is disconnected from the impact that the rules that it creates has on business, and not just corporations. I don't think anyone cares about Amazon. I think what they care about is the smaller business owner in a small town like Santa Barbara that is experiencing the impact here. Obviously, it's a political matter. It's been a political matter for a long time. It's unfortunately not a health issue at all. We've seen it play out in the schools. We've seen it play out in city government buildings, county government buildings. People aren't really debating the health. They're debating whether it's fair for this group to be open and this group not to be.
Well, and I think also there's some question about how effective curfews are in affecting the health of it. I've read some stories from around the state that law enforcement officers are saying they're not going to enforce it. Have either of you heard anything from the cops or the sheriff? What?
Indirectly, but what I've been told from sources close by, that they do not want to enforce this. They know it's going to be a pain in the ass, and that people don't like to listen. And it's not something that they're interested in enforcing. They feel like they have a better use of their time. Yeah.
Josh, I think you should do a story about being out after curfew, and it'd be even better if you got arrested. And I'm sure Newshawk would make your bail too. So, oh, wait a minute. We do have cash. Go ahead.
Well, I'm only allowed to be out past curfew Thursdays and Saturdays. So maybe I'll see if I can make it happen. But I don't think anybody, I don't think people are going to start getting arrested because of this. I think the goal is that we need to stay indoors after 10. I don't think it applies to any of us. I think it applies to the college students, the people who are out partying, if there's a restaurant or something, or there's some activity. I mean, going to the hypocrisy, I know I've been saying this for 6 months and I keep losing this battle, but it's kind of dumb, quite frankly, to say that you have to have a curfew. And then if you go down State Street, it's just so many people, it's just, I know all those people are not from the same household. Like, they're not. And okay, so we can't trace COVID coming back to the 500 block of State Street. Fine. The perception is what matters. And I feel like, we're doing a lot of outdoor dining, and I know the science says it doesn't spread as well out there, but it's just these mixed messages. We're either in the pandemic or we're not. We're either all together or we're not. And I don't know what is spared by or saved by having a curfew at 10, because I don't know. Most of the crowds I see whenever I'm downtown, which is not often, but it's like from 3 to 7, when I'm out reporting or something.
Well, yeah, I guess Gavin wanted to police his own behavior. And before we leave that, we should point out that not only was he having dinner with a friend, but one of the biggest lobbyists in Sacramento, who also has a satellite office here in Santa Barbara, which helped us put together the cannabis ordinance. I don't want to leave that. Hey, Delaney,
let's just rename the show Newsmakers Focused on.
I noticed he invoked his ethics in talking about a roundabout yesterday, which I thought was kind of strange, and assured me that he's still reading and listening. So, Delaney, a pandemic-related thing on the county finances. We got 3 different projections, I guess, for the 5-year out budgets, ranging from $12 million shortfall to $40 million shortfall, which surprises me, because when we started this, everybody thought that things were going to be much worse fiscally. That actually sounds pretty manageable.
Yeah, and that's also because it projects that our reserves are going to be full for all 5 years, the next 5 years in all scenarios. So that's a reason why we're not too hard hit. And then cannabis has actually helped a little bit, not a lot. Cannabis is mostly paying for itself. It's paying for enforcement and stuff, but cannabis is also the dollars. It's considered recession resistant. The entire industry. And so it's expected to continue contributing more and more taxes every year, regardless of if the recession gets worse or not. And that is going to fill in.
Who considers it that?
Industry
Austin
experts.
Steve.
I don't know. I mean, it was referred to as such by several people, but
Yeah.
I'd say cannabis industry experts would consider that. And when you look at just since COVID has started, you know, we have been considered a recession since January or February, I believe. You know, cannabis has exploded. So it's kind of already starting to prove true. And so that is also going to help this county.
I don't think I've ever driven by pharmacy one time and there wasn't a huge line down the street. So, I mean, I don't know who said it, but it makes logical sense what Delaney said, which is.
No, I just think they're up in Sacramento, you know, trying to get tax relief because things are so bad. So, you know, it's a complicated thing, and
Yeah.
far be it for me to take sides in that one. But so Josh, we also heard a lot of scary projections early on about the city budget. But how are things there? I guess the hotel tax, the TOT, is not doing so well, and also the parking revenues.
Yeah, I mean, everything's down except the city council salaries, which they got a raise, but that's just a little jab. Some of them chose to, I guess, give them back.
Who gave it back? Who gave it back? We should applaud them.
Well, it's written harder that they have to accept it. So I think some of them decided that they would donate it or something. I don't know all of the ones who did. I think Kristen.
What did the mayor do?
I don't know what Kathy did, but we can do a show on what Kathy and Doss did, what they knew and when they knew it with Jerry Roberts, maybe next time.
And Gavin Newsom, don't forget Gavin Newsom.
Everything's down, hotel, bed tax, sales tax. And then this week they were talking about how they need to move to automated license plate readers because it'll be a way for them to save money and personnel because they pay about $1.1 million in people who work at the kiosks, just sort of the part-timers. And so this automated system is going to allow them to eliminate most of that cost, like 90% of that cost. They're still going to have some kiosk workers. They're going to be roaming the lots, helping people who have an issue, but it'll be much similar to Paseo Nuevo Mall, if you've ever been there, where you just go in, take the key card and go out and read your license plate. It'll also allow them to capture money around the clock. Currently, the parking lots, they stop collecting money, so people know you can park your car, and if you leave it there late, I forget the time, maybe past 10 or something, that you can actually not have to pay. So it's going to eliminate all of that. There's
well, you
a lot.
Can't be out past 10 anyway, so it's okay. Yeah, I mean, I like the what are they called, kiosketeers? I mean, that's one of the nice things about going downtown and parking downtown and stuff, is that there's an actual human there. Is it really going to save that much money? I guess in the long run, huh?
They said it was $1.1 million annually. Before COVID, they had about 110 of those workers. They're all part-time. And then they started to do some attrition and they cut it down to 85. COVID hit, it was 0, rehired 45. They're trying to get it down to 20.
Yeah, I was confused by one quote from Rob Dayton in your piece where he said, well, people aren't coming downtown. If people aren't, I didn't understand. Did he meant our customers are not coming downtown to shop, or they're not using the parking garage?
Rob is a notorious alternative transportation advocate, activist. So I think what he's trying to assert there is people are not driving cars downtown anymore, which would fit into his worldview in terms of the city wanting to plan for more different mobility types. So I think that's what he meant. Obviously, people are going downtown. If you're downtown, it's busier now than it has been in 20 years, probably. It's so busy. But I think what he's saying is that people aren't parking in parking lots the way that they used to.
So what have they been, so the kiosk people have been working throughout this period, correct? So we
There was
have
a short time when they laid them all off.
Yeah.
Whatever that was, May, June, something like, but they've been back for a while.
Okay.
Another thing, Jerry, and I don't know if this came up at the meeting, Josh, because I didn't watch city council, but during the pandemic there, and I know I'm going to be hated for this, but the workers are less needed. I mean, I have to move my car because I work downtown. I have to move my car a bajillion times a day so I don't have to pay for parking. And so I go through the kiosk constantly. And you are not just encouraged, I mean, it like strongly encouraged to not pay cash, to not interact with the kiosk person, and to only put your actual debit card in the machine. So I just kind of look at them and give them a smile, but I don't even say, we don't even have a hello anymore. It's kind of almost like they're not needed half the
You're
time.
wearing a mask, so how would they know if you're smiling?
You can tell people are smiling with their eyes. I can always tell. But
No.
but
So wait a minute. So you park in the garage and then you move your car every 75 minutes?
not necessarily. I mean, I try to, but everyone at the ND does. It's great. Come work downtown. But
You should tell Rob Dayton this.
For the record, one of the reasons I quit the Pacific Coast Business Times was because they're on Carrillo. Like, no, I'm not going to move my car every few minutes because well, never mind. I won't say that, but I don't think it's right for an employee to have to move their car every 75 minutes when you hire me to work downtown.
All right.
But my point is I'm really familiar with the kiosks and I go through them constantly. And there's obviously the times that I don't make it through and I have to pay $1.50 because I didn't move my car in time. And they really don't want you to actually interact with the kiosk person when you pay $1.50. It's highly discouraged to do so.
Yeah, the city presented this scenario like the kiosketeers, like it's this incredible relationship between driving through and the ticket and the conversation exchange. Every time I go through it, maybe it's me, but they're just like,
yeah, exactly. They signal
like
for you to use
never
the
a warm
machine,
embrace.
and they are very hardcore about like, do not hand me your money.
Josh, it's you. I've had some of the most rewarding conversations that of 30 seconds or less duration than I.
Harry, it's not you, it's me.
Okay, so Delaney, what's that? We had this weird death under suspicious circumstances out at UCSB that I know you worked a little bit on. What's the latest on that?
So the police are completely silent about this. So any information I have comes from sources close to the victim and witnesses. But what had happened here was a couple, Jeff, Jewell and his wife and a friend were walking their dog, the three of them on.
He worked at the Bren School.
Exactly. He worked at the Bren School and they were walking on campus in the evening around in the 5 o'clock hour, walking their dog. And there was a strange man that they didn't know, had no connection with, who was just being crazy, throwing rocks at them, harassing them. And so Jeff told his wife and his wife's friend, run, get out of here, and that he would handle it. So they did that, but the wife came back a couple minutes later and her husband, Jeff, was already on the ground. He wasn't dead at that point. He did die. This is really sad, but he did die in her arms. And they later, from the autopsy report, found out he died of a heart attack. And so after finding that, although they had already found a person of interest, taken him in for questioning, they then had to release him because he can't be charged with a crime because the man died of a heart attack.
The guy who was throwing rocks?
Yes. So the guy who was throwing rocks was released because the victim, Jeff Jewell, died of a heart attack. He didn't die of an assault. So the final report doesn't come out for like 8 more weeks. But based on that alone, the police released the person of interest.
But
so at this
presumably
point,
that person could still be charged with manslaughter or something like that, I imagine.
exactly, they would have to prove that that heart attack was a result of the altercation between the two guys. So super sad story.
Very sad story. Very sad.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Josh, I got to ask you about this electric bike thing. Somehow all roads lead to Rob Dayton. So now they were going to put these charging stations on State Street, and all the aesthetics people objected, and now they're going to put them somewhere else, but it's going to the Planning Commission. How big is this program? And then I have a special question from a reader I have to ask you.
So there was a plan to install these e-bikes. They're docked, so that would avoid clutter, people just riding them and dropping them off everywhere, as we saw with the scooters and what we see in Isla Vista. So that was the plan. Then COVID hit, and then all the dining went outdoors. And so they decided that they were going to do a few downtown, but the Historic Landmarks Commission said these don't look right. They don't fit. So they said no. So the council is going to do like a pilot program. The council basically overruled the HLC and said, we're going to do a few downtown. We're not going to do as many as we wanted. And Cabrillo Boulevard, though, is outside of El Pueblo Viejo. So they can pretty much do what they want there. So for now, they're going to install 10 docks. And I don't know exactly how many bikes that is, but they're going to install 10 docks. And the idea is that these aren't bike rentals. They say these aren't catered toward tourists. These are catered toward to locals who want to get around town without having to get in their car. So they're going to be able to get on a bike and ride it around town and then drop it off at another dock station. So it's, it's kind of cool, especially if you're, between the ages of 25 and 40. It's like, wow, San Francisco, Seattle, Portland, Austin, Texas.
So basically you're using your credit card in the docking station, or you get a monthly subscription, or what?
I think there's a few ways that we're talking about it, but yeah, you can prepay, you can use your credit card on the spot, and you can take it. I forget how much, but it's, a few dollars a mile kind of thing. So.
And then Bev King, one of my most loyal readers, wants to know about, is there a helmet requirement with this? Is the city going to make that part of the ordinance or part of the contract or anything?
That's a smart question based off of research and data. So you should probably turn to Delaney for that answer. I think my answer is no, that it's recommended. It's strongly recommended. But there's not going to be a place for you to get a helmet at the dock. I believe you have to bring your own helmet.
And if you're riding one, would you be liable to be cited for riding one without a helmet?
Yeah. I think so. Well, I don't know the answer to that.
Well, that's the law. So yeah, I mean, that's just common sense, right?
Yeah.
Common sense.
All common sense questions.
I
mean, they should be. I don't know how many people without bikes are without helmets are cited. Like I don't
probably not that many. I mean, I guess unless the cops have nothing better to do.
But it is a local ordinance, is it not?
No, it is. That's what I'm saying is I know it is a local ordinance, so it should be common sense that it would apply to this, but I don't know how often that's actually enforced.
Right. Okay. All right. Delaney, I want to real quick that the piece you had on the really interesting on the Latino students being overwhelmingly listed as having academic problems. They did a survey.
Being in special education places.
They don't have academic problems, Jerry.
It's called special education. Yeah.
I was struggling for the words. I'm old. I don't know if you know.
Yes, Jerry, basically the conclusion of the data that the state found was that Santa Barbara Unified is taking kids whose first language is not English, which naturally, a younger elementary school kid who's learning a second language obviously won't have the same skills as someone who's already learned English from the get-go. And so they'll take those kids and they'll put them in special ed, even though they have zero learning disabilities. They're just learning a new language. And so they're trying to, the state flagged the district for having such a high amount of Latino kids in special ed, and then such a small amount of white kids in special ed. It was like a flipped, it was like reverse. So I mean, that's just the bottom line.
So what's the district doing about it?
The district has to go through now, and they have to go through these IEPs, which are individual education plans, and find out which one of these kids don't really need to be in special ed, right? And they're kind of looking at this new holistic way of looking at what they call emerging multilingual learners, which is just English as a second language learners. They're looking at saying, hey, you have this skill, you have something good, we're going to build upon it. We're going to teach you more, rather than saying, oh, this is a hindrance, this is getting in the way of your education, right? Because that kind of mentality is what is making these kids perform on a poorer level. Go for it, Josh.
Can I add something? And the other thing that they're going to do is better training for the teachers, because the issue that happens here is that if you're a young student of color, right? If you're a Hispanic, African American, any person of color, you know, maybe you didn't go to preschool, okay? So maybe it took you a little bit longer to develop your confidence, and then there you are in second or third grade, and the teacher identifies you as, oh, you're quiet. That must mean you have a problem. Whereas some other students who are not of color, oh, they're really good thinkers, they're smart. Teachers have to get better at being able to understand specific nuances of students and how they learn. That there's not a one size fits all. If a person of color is quiet, it does not mean they're dumb. And if a person of color is hyper, it does not mean they can't focus. What happens is teachers, unfortunately, have identified those two and said, oh, you need an individualized education program, okay? You need an IED. Whereas other students are like, oh, well, they're just being students. And I think the big takeaway of that is we need to see systematic training of teachers so that they understand that it's not right to teach to treat one behavior one way and another behavior the other way, because there's a good chance that you're misreading it. And as we know from the data, students who learn other languages eventually surpass those who don't know multiple languages.
Exactly.
It's not in the elementary years. It's usually like what, Delaney, like 8th grade, 9th grade? Something like
middle school is when they start to surpass. And you're totally correct about the training. There's actually, I forgot about that. Another thing that they're doing is anti-bias training for teachers, specifically on what Josh was just talking about. So that's going to be a big one.
Yeah, good stuff. That's. I'm so glad that two of you cover the school district. I mean, that's of all the beats that, you know, get on.
I love it. It's my favorite beat. I hope I never get off it.
The education is the most important beat. Everybody cares about city council, supervisors. It's like nothing is more important than children. And
Wow.
that's why Delaney does it. And that's why I try to keep up with her.
Yeah, people are looking at you two are on it. All right, let me ask you really quick, Josh. I know that you read the Montecito Journal's exclusive interview with James Joyce III. Gwen Lurie got a little mixed up, saying she was the first to report on this. Actually, she's the second, as we know. But so what do you think? He's going to be a contender or what? I mean, it sure sounded like he was running. I don't know.
I know Newsmakers with JR broke the James Joyce, or you were encouraging him to run. I know you were definitely first in my inbox with that. I think what's developing is a really fascinating scenario, because the Democratic Party will have to choose whether they're going to dump Kathy and go for James Joyce. And James Joyce, if he does run, I mean, he's been ingrained in Democratic circles. You know, he worked for Doss Williams. He worked for Hannah Beth Jackson. He's considered, you know, a Democrat within the Santa Barbara County party sort of system. He's recognized as that. Has he walked? Has he volunteered? Has he done these things on the ground like Kathy has? those are questions that the party is going to have to consider. It's fascinating to see if they're going to stick with Kathy or go with James Joyce, who is got a great reputation. It's just interesting to see what they're going to do. I wouldn't underestimate Kathy's ability to outwork anyone else in this contest.
Yeah, at least when she's campaigning.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks, guys. Thanks, Delaney. Thanks, Josh. We'll see you next week. Stay safe, please. Okay. And Josh, I don't want to see you down in those saloons after 10 o'clock. Okay.
Saloons. Yeah, that's me. All right.